There is that saying, and it comes out every single time when we talk about mobile photography, is that the best camera is the one you have with you. And I don't know many people that leave their home without their smartphone. I'm David McClelland. I'm a technology journalist and an avid mobile photographer. One of the main things about smartphone photography is the form factor. It's the ability to stick that camera in places where you may not be able to get a large camera. And that, as a creative, allows you to experiment a lot more with the angles. Stick them high, stick them low, stick them in the mud if you want to. These are things that you wouldn't really dare do or even be able to do with a larger camera where there are physical limitations. But with a phone, they're so small, they're so light, you can really be creative. Don't always take the picture from where your head is at. Get down on the floor, stick the photo on the floor. One of the best pictures I took last year was in Gibraltar. And the angle that I wanted was on a beach with my daughter with Gibraltar Rock behind. And I found that when I was trying to take the picture from head height or even down on my knees, I couldn't get the beach, the reflection in the water and the rock behind. So high was the Rock of Gibraltar. So I had a waterproof phone. All I did was put the phone on the floor and take a few shots. I couldn't see what was on the viewfinder, but as soon as I picked it up, I could see straight away whether I had the shot, the framing that I wanted. So that's the kind of flexibility that you get with a mobile platform. And if you're not really using it in that way, then I think you're missing out on one of its main strengths. There is that saying, and it comes out every single time when we talk about mobile photography, is that the best camera is the one you have with you. And I don't know many people that leave their home without their smartphone on purpose. Even though I recently bought a compact camera, I've probably used it 2 or 3 times because it's just another piece of kit that I don't need to carry around with me. And the difference between the kind of shot that I can get with a dedicated compact camera and my smartphone, that gap is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking to the point where I almost prefer some of the shots, if not many of the shots, that I'm able to get from my smartphone. And there are limitations. Of course, there are optical limitations in terms of lenses and so on. But how smart smartphone cameras are getting using artificial intelligence and using processing to create the illusion of shallow depth of field and so on means that the benefits of carrying around an extra bit of kit are beginning to disappear for me. And I'm very fortunate in my work as a journalist, I suppose, that I get to travel around some amazing places. And when it comes to mobile photography, I think there was a kind of tipping point for me, maybe 2011, 2010, where it felt to me as though the cameras on smartphones were finally getting good enough to be taken seriously, to compete with the dedicated cameras that I've been looking at. And my into that, I was at an event with some other journalists, and one of the journalists said, "Hey, you wouldn't mind just taking a picture of me, just for the website?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that." Didn't think anything of it, and then a couple of days later, I happened to end up on the website. There's my picture, and it looked amazing, and it looked as good as any of the other images that I saw from the same event, the images that I'd taken with a proper camera at that event. And that point there, I realised that smartphone cameras can be used for serious work, for serious photography and for serious news gathering as well. And that there was the start of this journey to explore just how far I could push, just how far the industry would accept using smartphones for serious use. One of my first jobs where my smartphone was my main tool was at a motorsports event in England, again around about 2011 or so, where they realised that social media was becoming a big platform for them to share their story, and they wanted some people to go out and take pictures and take video using their smartphones to be able to share instantly on those social platforms. And that's the thing, the speed at which these photos and videos can make it onto the social platforms is all part of the value. Some of that stuff at live events doesn't have very much value 2 or 3 days or a week afterwards. So I went along to this event with my smartphone and started taking pictures and trying to capture the excitement that people were having at this event where there were 100,000 odd people dressing up and doing all manner of wonderful things. I was there with traditional photographers, traditional cameramen from broadcast outlets, and to begin with, the first day or so, they scoffed a little at the work that I was doing. They kind of looked down a little bit and go, oh, there he is with his smartphone. And then a couple of days later, towards the end of the event, when none of their footage had made it onto television yet, none of their footage had made it into magazines yet, all of my footage had straight away, and they were looking over my shoulder, looking at my phone, going, actually, that's quite good. How did you get that? And by the end of those 3 or 4 days, I realised that they felt threatened. They knew that what I was holding in my hand was the future of capturing images, capturing video, and sharing it. It was the future of broadcast that I held there in my hand. And the guys with the large cameras, with the broadcast cameras and so on, their days were numbered. I think with any tool, you need to know how to use it, know what its strengths are, know what its weaknesses are. And with mobile, there are a lot of strengths. It's the speed at which you can capture, edit, and share an image. But you also need to acknowledge what the weaknesses are as well. The fact that it is a small, light device, the fact that you are quite limited in terms of the camera sensor itself, the kind of shots that work. Fast moving doesn't always work very well with a mobile. Panning and moving around doesn't. So knowing when to use those accessories is as important as having them. You can pimp up your smartphone with a rig that makes it almost as large as, if not larger than, a traditional broadcast camera or a stills camera that a professional paparazzo would use. But if that's not actually helping you get the right shot, then there's no point. You're removing all the advantages of the smartphone in the first place. So I guess my tips are for knowing when to use accessories is just to understand what your phone can do without those accessories and know exactly what each one of those accessories on top is going to help you achieve. Because no one wants to carry around more kit than they need. Mobile is about being mobile. So carry around only the stuff that you're going to need to get the shot that you want. One of the limitations of smartphones has been the ability to adjust how much focal length, whether you can zoom in or out with optics rather than with a digital zoom, which degrades the quality. And one of the solutions that we're seeing in smartphones at the moment is this dual lens solution, so that one will be the wide shot and then you flip to this other lens. It's all built into the phone and it's more like a telephoto lens for taking portrait shots, perhaps. I've enjoyed experimenting with those, and as a photographer, I see nothing wrong with those. The implementations in phones that I've used have been very, very smooth. And as a creative, it just gives you more options when you're out taking pictures. There's a kind of lens once upon a time called a tilt shift lens that was used a lot by photographers who were taking pictures of architecture on large scales. And what it enabled them to do was to make sure that even large buildings that went off into the distance would be pin sharp in terms of focus. Now, you could play around with that effect and create this tilt shift effect where some of the picture, a line or a circle, would be in focus, some of it was out of it. These lenses cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds, sometimes many more than that. And before long, people realized that they could get exactly the same effect using an app or using a plugin on their desktop. And there was an argument about, well, you know, it's better off to get it in the camera. I disagreed with that, because you could get a nice clean shot and then you could alter the tilt shift effect in your app or on your desktop. And it's the same for many effects now, where I actually think you have more flexibility doing it as post-processing than doing it in the camera. You know, I can change where bits are in focus or out of focus in my smartphone, whereas if I've taken the shot in camera like that, I really don't have any options after I've taken the shot. Now, I know that some purists will disagree with me, and I do believe that you should try and do as much editing in camera in terms of composition, in terms of lighting as possible. but also make sure that you're giving yourself options so that you can change the image. Your creativity doesn't have to stop the moment you press the shutter on your camera or on your phone. Give yourself options so that your creative journey with that image can continue well into the night if you're sitting in front of an editing app or on your desktop. In terms of the future of smartphone photography, we have gone past the point years ago where smartphones can rival dedicated cameras. They absolutely can, we know that. We see that on billboards and advertising campaigns and so on. Where they go next will be addressing some of the limitations that we still do see in smartphones, and whether that is the lenses. You know, we're already seeing dual lenses coming into smartphones now to try and overcome some of those challenges with optics. Whether we'll see many more lenses appearing in smartphones, I don't know. And this is where the technology, the artificial intelligence, this computational photography thing that we start seeing that can introduce an artificial depth of field. Whether we see larger sensors in cameras that can enable a kind of digital zoom that enables us to, you know, overcome some of these optical challenges without that degradation of quality, that might be another way around this. And goodness knows there are enough big firms working on trying to make camera and image technology better, that in the next 2 or 3 years I can only see, you know, more flexibility for us as photographers being the result.